What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be going through the best light side hero star cards for Galactic Assault and Supremacy in Star Wars Battlefront 2. In this video we'll be going over all 11 light side heroes in the game and covering the 3 or 4 cards that I personally think are the best to use for these game modes. Now, it is worth keeping in mind that this is just my opinion on what the best cards are to use. There is no such thing as the objectively best loadouts, despite how many people want to comment and tell me that their card loadouts are better than anyone else's. So again, just keep that in mind. These are my personal suggestions for the millions of new players that have recently joined the game. If you enjoyed this video and it ends up helping you out, then be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more Battlefront 2 content. But with that out of the way, let's get stuck right into it. So, starting off with Chewie, he is definitely one of the harder heroes in the game to use in these modes. He can go alright in Supremacy, to be fair, but at least in Galactic Assault he can be one of the harder heroes for sure. The first card I'd recommend is the bonus health card, and this one is pretty simple. It gives you up to 150 more health, which is always great for any hero, so this one is definitely one you want to be using. The next card that's worth mentioning is his Impervious card, and what this one does is that with every 200 damage that you deal with any of his abilities, you'll gain 2% damage reduction. Let's just say you see a few enemy heavies, you fire up Furious Bowcaster and you manage to take 3 or 4 of them out with it. That is a possibility of 800 damage dealt, which would then give you 8% damage reduction permanently, or at least until you die anyway. This obviously turns you into a bit of a tank if you do get on a kill streak, and pretty much every bit of damage that you get with his abilities makes you even harder for the enemies to kill. Now, the third card that I'd recommend is the Echoing Roar card, and this one will just extend the duration of Furious Bowcaster by up to 40% for each kill that you get with it. This one is amazing for getting those big multi-kills and trying to hold down positions that are full of enemies. If you can get a few quick kills, then it can really snowball into a very quick kill streak. Moving on, we have Han Solo, and like I mentioned in the previous video, I feel like Han doesn't have many good options. I've always kind of struggled with his card selections, and personally I do think he has the worst card options in the entire game. The first card I'd recommend using for him is the Broad Shoulders card, and this one just gives up to 40% damage reduction while using Shoulder Charge. Shoulder Charge can be a really solid ability in close quarters areas, however it does leave you extremely vulnerable to attack, so adding some damage reduction is a great way to really improve that ability. The next card I'd recommend is the Airburst card, and this one makes it so that if you blow up the Detonite charge before it attaches to a surface, then it will deal up to 20% more damage. More often than not, you're going to detonate it before it lands anyway. It's honestly much better to use it that way, and so this does just incentivize that even more. Now, the third card I'd recommend is the All-In card, and this one makes it so that each time you get a kill with his Shoulder Charge, it will reduce the cooldown of the next use by 50%. Honestly, this card isn't anything super special, as like I said, his cards really aren't the best, but it does allow this ability to be used more often, and therefore in close quarters it can become a bit of a get out of jail free card, so personally it is the card that I tend to run in that third slot. Moving on, we have Lando, and Lando can be pretty hard to use for a newer player at times, but in saying that, he has a really solid collection of star cards that genuinely improve him a hell of a lot compared to a lot of the other heroes. The first card I'd recommend is his Hot and Cold card, and exactly the same as Chewie, this just gives him up to 150 extra health, which is obviously super helpful. The second card I'd recommend is his Maximized Efficiency card, and this one makes it so that if you hit 3 or more enemies with his Sharp Shot ability, then the cooldown on the next use will be reduced by 40%. Depending on the map, you're likely going to hit 3 or more enemies almost every single time, considering it's literally an aimbot, so this one is a really solid card to choose. The third card I'd recommend is the Wide-Eyed card, and this one actually just increases the distance of his Sharp Shot ability by up to 40%. Now, not only does this just help out in general, as you can get those easy one-hit kills from even further, but this card also just helps out that last card as well by giving you a much higher chance of hitting those 3 enemies that are required for the faster cooldown. So these 2 cards work perfectly in tandem. Moving on, we have Leia, and Leia has definitely improved a lot in these modes over the last few years. She used to be one of the hardest characters to use, but she is pretty damn good in her current state. The first card I'd recommend is her Relentless Firing card, and this just increases the time that she can use rapid fire before it runs out. This ability is absolutely insane, especially in close quarters areas where you can pretty much use it for crowd control, and so extending its active time is definitely very helpful. The second card I'd recommend is her High Spirit card, and this one just gives Leia an extra 100 health regen, taking it up to a total of 350. This one is pretty handy for staying alive longer, however her shield does also regenerate health too, so it can be seen as almost a pointless card, but that just depends on your playstyle. When you're up on the front lines, you often won't have time to throw down her shield and heal up, and so this one is definitely great if you just want to be a little bit more aggressive with Leia. The third card I'd recommend is the Fearless card, and this turns her grenades from a pretty solid ability to a very solid ability, increasing the radius of those thermal detonators. It might not sound like a huge increase, but at least when I use this card I tend to get a ton more multi-kills, and you can definitely feel the difference when you are actually using the card. Moving on, we have Luke Skywalker, and if I'm going to be honest, Luke is probably the best light side hero in the game, which funnily enough never used to be the case. The first card I'd recommend is the Intensify card, and this one makes it so that for each regular kill or 200 damage you deal against villains, you'll get 2 damage added to your lightsaber attacks. If you can get a 10 kill streak, then your saber attacks will actually become a 1-hit kill on regular troopers other than a heavy, and obviously the more and more damage you deal without dying, the better that gets, so this one is awesome for helping you go on some kill streaks. The second card I'd recommend is the Jedi Reflexes card, and this one makes it so that you get 3 rush attacks instead of 2 at the cost of a slightly slower recharge. His rush attack is useful in so many situations, mostly when it comes to closing ground on enemies without making yourself too vulnerable, and so having that third one is definitely very handy. The third card I'd recommend is the Extended Push Reach card, and this one just increases the area of effect of his push ability. This ability is obviously one of the better abilities in the game, and so increasing its area of effect is helpful for obvious reasons. The more range that you have, the more versatile you become. Moving on, we have Rey, and Rey is a really great character to use in these modes. She's really solid for team play and can honestly turn the tide of a match if she is used correctly. The first card I recommend is her Focus Sight card, and this one makes it so that her Insight ability, which deals extra damage, reduces stamina, and allows you to see enemies through walls, lasts for up to 7 seconds longer. Bit of a no-brainer here, this ability is really solid and making it last longer is very handy indeed. The second card I'd recommend is her Damaging Strike card, and this one just makes it so that with each hit, the damage of her Dash Strike will increase by up to 30%. Dash Strike is a really solid ability for close quarter situations, and if you can line up a few enemies and hit them all at once, you can get some very nice multi-kills with this card equipped. The third card I'd recommend is her Fast Sight card, and this one just increases the distance of her Insight ability, allowing you to see enemies through walls from further away. This one is more of a team-based ability, to be honest. It's rarely going to be a huge help for you personally, as the base range is pretty solid, but it also does allow the rest of your team to see more enemies and therefore help you out a lot more than usual. Now, if you're not a fan of the Fast Sight card, then the Resilient Dash card can be a really solid card to choose as well. This one can allow you to use the Dash Strike ability without quite as much of a risk, and paired with the second card I mentioned, this is a really solid card to choose. Moving on, we have Yoda, and Yoda definitely has a very unique playstyle, so he can be pretty hard to get the hang of, but overall he is a very solid little character. The first card I'd recommend is the Agility card, and this one gives Yoda a third dash at the expense of a slower recharge rate. This dash attack is useful for the exact same reason as Luke's, but it also deals damage through blocks, and so without a doubt this is the #1 card that you want to have equipped at all times. The second card I'd recommend is the Jedi Mentor card, and this one actually just gives you up to 8% damage reduction at all times, effectively giving you more health. Now, it's not a whole lot more, only 60 added health effectively, but either way that is still more health, which is always a good thing. The third card I'd recommend is the Feel the Force card, and once again this just gives Yoda more health. However, it is actually through the Presence ability instead, so it only adds more health when you activate the ability. Yoda is such a crafty little character, but if you get caught out you can die very quickly, so with these last 2 cards you're essentially fixing one of his main weaknesses. Moving on, we have Finn, and although he can be hard for newer players to get the hang of, he is definitely a very solid character these days, which never really used to be the case for a very long time in Battlefront 2. The first card I'd recommend is the Stay Calm card. This one just makes it so that with each kill using Deadeye, the duration of the ability will be increased by up to 40%. This one is absolutely insane. If you can get into some areas where there's a ton of enemies, maps like Starkiller Base or even Endor can be insane for this, and you can get some crazy big multi-kills. The second card I'd recommend is the One Resistance card, and this one makes it so that if you affect 3 teammates with Big Deal, the recharge rate for that use will be reduced by 40%. Now, that doesn't need to be 3 people all at once. If you affect 3 teammates but just all at separate times, then that will still count, and so this one is great for helping Big Deal regenerate much faster. The third card I'd recommend is the No More Running card, and this one makes it so that after 3 kills with Deadeye, its damage will be increased by 12, which is actually quite a lot. This one is kind of obvious. Deadeye is easily his best ability, at least in terms of getting kills anyway, and so allowing it to deal more damage is always going to be handy. Moving on, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this man is definitely the best defensive player in the game and is probably a great character for some of you newer players to start out with, as he can be very forgiving. The first card I'd recommend is the Jedi Resilience card, and this one gives him an added 100 health regen, taking his health regen up to 400. If you go from 750 HP all the way down to 350, you can actually still fully regen back to 750, so this one pretty much speaks for itself. The second card I'd recommend is the Forward card, and this one gives his defensive rush ability an added 40 damage per hit, turning it into a 1-hit kill on all regular troopers other than a heavy. This is one of those very few cards that, even though I said earlier cards are subjective, you have to have this one at all times in these modes, as it turns a pretty shitty ability into one of the better abilities in these game modes. The third and final card I'd recommend is the Give It All card, and this one just increases the base range of the All Out push ability. Obi-Wan is pretty solid in most areas, however he is a little bit slower, and so adding to his range is definitely helpful when you find yourself in a pinch. Now moving on, we have Anakin, and like I said in the previous video, Anakin is one of the more powerful but also annoying characters in the game. The first card I'd recommend is the Tenacious card, and this one is pretty obvious. It just gives you an added 100 HP, which, as I've mentioned, is always a hard thing to turn down, especially for those newer players out there. The second card I'd recommend is the Raw Strength card, and this one just increases the damage by up to 50 for his Heroic Might ability. This turns Heroic Might into a one-hit kill ability against all troopers other than a heavy, and so when you have a chance to create a one-hit kill ability from a star card, it is generally always a good idea. The third card I'd recommend is the Control the Force card, and this just adds onto that last card, this one increasing the area of effect of the Heroic Might ability by up to 5 meters. So you're not only getting a one-hit kill ability, but you're also getting a much larger area of effect. Now, if you are a bit more of a competent player and you feel you don't need added health, then the Massive Strikes card can be a solid replacement for the Tenacious card, turning your saber attacks into a one-hit kill on all troopers other than the heavy. Now, it does come with the cost of 25% extra stamina, however, again, if you're a bit more of a competent player, then you will likely be able to control your stamina much better. Now, last but not least, we have little BB-8, and honestly, it is surprising how well this little fella can do in these game modes. The first card I'd recommend is the Self-Repair Star card, and this one just gives him more health regen, which is definitely very handy considering he can be taken out very quickly at times. The second card I'd recommend is the Whirlwind card, and this one just increases both the damage and range of the Cable Spin ability, which is great for getting some really big multi-kills in and around the objective. Now, the third and final card I'd recommend is the Spinner card, and when it is fully upgraded, this one reduces the cooldown of Cable Spin by up to 10 seconds if you simply hit 2 enemies, which is obviously not very hard at all. This one allows you to use Cable Spin so much more often, and considering it is by far his best ability, this one is a no-brainer. So those are my choices for some of the best star cards for all 11 light side heroes in Star Wars Battlefront 2, at least when it comes to GA and Supremacy anyway, and hopefully those will help some of you newer guys out when it comes to those game modes. Like I said, I will be following up on this one soon with a dark side version as well, and I have already covered these cards for the hero vs villain game modes as well, so be sure to go and check those ones out too. That is going to do it for this one though, guys. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Crush them! Make them suffer!